11.6, standard deviation. Okay, real honest with you guys. There's a lot more that we could do it, but now that we have calculators, it's a lot easier. So standard deviation and variance, when we're talking about this. Standard deviation is symbolized by this Greek letter, and then variance is that Greek letter squared. It's basically showing you how much data deviates from the mean. So how spread out it is. That's what this is saying, how spread out it is. The higher that this number is, the more spread out the data points are, essentially. So if you take AP stats or any type of statistics class later on in your life, you'll go much deeper with variance and standard deviation. We're just kind of touching on the surface. So the first thing that you would do is to plug these data points like we have. You push stat, push edit. Oh, nothing's in there now. So I'm going to type in these data points. I'm going to push stat, calculate. I'm doing my one variable. I keep on pushing enter until I actually have it. Now we are going to be using this standard deviation right here. So it's saying find the mean, standard deviation, and variance. So my mean is going to be 7.4. That's the X the line above it. My standard deviation. Now often you will see me not write it all out. I'll usually do this is going to be, or else you can also put the theta. That's not theta. I have to look up that Greek letter is 1.5. That means the theta is not that spread out. And then my variance. When I'm looking for my variance, I take whatever my standard deviation is. So in this case, it's 1.5, and I square it. It's 1.5 squared will give me 2.25. That's it. Right now, I want you to try to do this next one by yourself. It's saying find the mean, variance, standard deviation of the data set. So these are the data numbers that you plugged into your L1. These are the data numbers, and I want you to find the mean, standard deviation, and variance. So my mean is 17.6. My standard deviation is 3.5. My variance would do 3.5 squared. It'll be 12.25. Now it's asking for how many standard deviations from the mean do the values fall. First, I have to figure out what my standard deviation and mean are. So right now, this is the same data set. So first thing I'm going to do is put my mean. My mean is my average, it's not my median, but I'm going to have a reference. So I need to figure out what my highest and lowest numbers are because I have to figure out within how many standard deviations that all the data lies. So I'm looking at this. 22 looks pretty high. 24 would be my highest. So this right here would be my max. I'm going to put a reference there. And my lowest would be 13 is pretty low. Nope, 12 right here. This would be my min. So I need to figure out how many times 3.5 fits in. So I'm going to be adding and subtracting to see if it will fit. As long as it fits the lowest and the highest number, then it's going to fit everything in between. So on the top side, I'm going to add a standard deviation. On the left side, I'm going to subtract a standard deviation. So I take my mean, again, my mean, not my median, so 17.6, and I add 3.5 to it, I get 21.1. If I take my 17.6 and subtract my 3.5 from it, I get 14.1. Well, 24 is still higher than that, so I'm going to have to do this again. I'm going to have to add 3.5, so 21.1 plus 3.5. It's always the standard deviation. That's 24.6. 12 is lower than that, so I'm going to have to, again, subtract 3.5 from my 14.4. So 14.1 subtract 3.5 would give me 10.6. Now when I'm looking at this is one standard deviation. When you move, this is not 1, 2. This is one standard deviation. It did not fit my lowest or my highest point because 12 is still lower than that and 24 is still higher than that. So I had to move again. So this is my second standard deviation. So now 12 is in between these two numbers and 24 is in between these two numbers. That means it's going to fit all my data sets. So within, I don't know why I spelled with like that, within 2 standard deviations. So right now, I want you to try to do that same thing with this data. So first, you have to find the mean and the standard deviation of this data right down here, the second or the number. I want you to try to figure out how many standard deviations. So you should get something that looks like this. Now, here's my mean. I add and subtract it. That's within 1. My smallest number was 3. My largest number is 14. So 3 and 14 are not in between these two numbers. So I do it again. So I add my 3.2 because that's my standard deviation. I subtract my 3.2. So when I'm looking at this, 3 fits into between here because 3 is larger than 0.9. However, 14 is still larger than this, so it still does not fit in between here. So I had to add again. So now all the numbers fit in between here. Your largest movement is how many standard deviations you have. So we moved, on the left hand, I only had to move 1, 2. But because I had to move 3 on the right, I am within 1, 2, 3 standard deviations. So my answer is within 3 standard deviations. That's my answer. And you have a wonderful, great, grand, wonderful day.